atmosphere, and it was breaking the rocks apart. And you saw how hard it was for us to break the rock when we hit it with the hammer when we were doing those experiments, remember? But these rocks were just falling apart into pieces because of the rain mixing with the gases, and they were going down to the seas and clogging the seas, and the seas were now full of salts that were not good, that were poisonous salts, that were having all kinds of things that were not good, and the seas needed to be cleaned. So a new thing was created, a tiny little cell. It's a single cell, and that was also given some rules. It was told that it needed to eat, that it needed to grow, and it needed to reproduce. What does that mean? That it needed to make more of itself. Okay, so a lot of it was made, more of it, and look at this. So if you scoot back a little, Sammy and Chloe, I can start unrolling this. So in the time of the Cambrian period, these single cells were created, and look up here, I see the very first single cell creatures, that were the sponges. Look at that. They came in all different shapes and sizes, and their job was to clean the ocean of those poisonous salts that were there in the ocean.
Jellyfish.
And there were jellyfish and more sponges, bivalves, crustaceans,
Worms.
all kinds of worms and algae. And the weather was actually quite warm, I think, in this time of period. And do you see these creatures?
Yeah.
They are called the trilobites.
Oh yeah.
And the trilobites lived at the very bottom of the ocean, and there were many of them. Today we don't have them, they're not alive, they're dead, they're extinct. But back in the time of the Cambrian period, there were many of them. And when we go back in the classroom, I'll show you. I have a fossil of it that Miss Ina gave me one time for my birthday that I will share with you. Okay. So look how beautiful they are.
How big are they? Did they bite?
They came in different sizes, but the one I have is about this size. If you want to know if they bit or not, we'll have to read up on that one. And you can. If you remember this morning you asked me about research, you can do some research on
Can I
that.
do research too?
Now,
Me too.
let me open this a little bit longer. Oh, looks like what is this?
I don't. Ice Age.
That's an icicle, and when you see an icicle on the chart, we know that the weather changed, that there was an ice age, and there was some change in the weather. So now it got to be a little bit cold and not so warm.
Age of the ice.
Invertebrates, it says.
Some dinosaurs. Like dinosaurs, like.
They are going to grow those hard outer shells inside their bodies too. So they started to grow bones because it seems like they had lots of calcium, and they started to develop fins. Look at that. What can you do if you have fins?
You can swim better.
You can swim better. These guys just stayed in one place in the same area and passed ate food that was passing by, but now they have fins and they can move around and look for their own food. And at the same time, on land, insects started to grow. Look at that. And there are ants and all kinds of insects.
Spiders.
And now by
Beetles.
this, yeah, right about this time, all the
And
trilobites died out. Because when it gets super cold, you either die out or you evolve, you change, and you continue to live. If you don't change and adjust, then you can't live.
What's that?
That looks like part of an early octopus. Does it have 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, only 5. No, why? Okay, let's scoot back a little. Period. Scoot back a little so I can come over
live
here
in
too.
this period? Do people live in this period?
Do you think? Have you seen any people?
No, I've seen people right there.
Outside, but not on the chart. We'll see if there are people. I don't think I have seen a person yet.
Oh, giant. This is the time with giant insects.
Yes,
Bingo.
now there are huge insects.
Can I tell you why?
There's
There's a lot of oxygen, so they get bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Dragonflies also catch mosquitoes.
And then look, the land grew, they got pushed and pushed together and lots of mountains formed. So some of the seas dried up and more land could be seen. That means more desert land was available. And these creatures, instead of carrying their babies inside their body, they started to lay eggs. Look at that. I see some creatures with eggs, and look, metamorphosis is happening. Look, the change from the egg all the way to the insect. And look how far we have come from the time of the trilobites. That was the Cambrian time. Look at that. And the weather is getting warmer and warmer now. Let's move over, Jeffrey.
It's getting dinosaurs!
And you're going to stop.
Dinosaurs!
Let's open both together. Okay, so this is the time of the Triassic period, and look how big these creatures are. They're huge compared to these ones. So those tiny creatures that were getting eaten by other creatures had to change. If they wanted to survive, they needed to change, so they've grown bigger. And I still see now that these guys that used to live on only in the water have come to the land. Look at that. And then over here also I see some creatures getting fur, trying to fly. But look, they still have their tail. They can fly, but they're still carrying a tail with them.
Yep.
And look, I have something to show you. That's my paper. Look at this. Look how big the dinosaurs were and how tiny the humans are compared to the dinosaur. Just look at that. And just imagine how the earth would have shook when they walked. Oh my, I'm glad I didn't live in that time.
Even parlay.
I really like to make. They give birth to live babies instead of the egg. Look at that. These guys are now giving birth to live babies. What are creatures that give birth to live babies called? Mammals. So now in this Cretaceous period, mammals are seen. And some of them carry their babies with them. Others leave their babies in their nests and go. And look, more mountains are created. And the land is starting to grow. And all the continents are not formed yet, properly some. But the land is getting attached together and growing bigger. And flowers are starting to grow. Yes. And their skin has changed so much from way back over there.
Wow.
Now they can stay on land all the time. We're going to stop there, Mali.
Hey, now we're getting into the people period.
Okay, not yet. And then, James, you asked me about the people, right? Now some other brand new creature is going to come around that has a brain, that can walk around on 2 feet and can think, and he can also love other things, and that is the human being. Like, just like you and I, all the humans come around.
Yeah.
Look at that. So look, where did we start? Way over there. See? We started way over there, and then it came. We had to go all this way before the humans came.
There was a lot of years.
Many, many years. Oh, I'm so glad you realized that, Molly.
Like 12 billion to 10,000 like 500 years.
You think 10,000 years it took for the people to come?
Centuries. No, I think it was a billion.
You think a billion years?
Or maybe 12 billion.
Oh, 12 billion, that's all for us to do some research and find out. So lots of questions you have in your mind. Okay, you'll ask Gianna. Okay, alright, you start here.
Not very windy today.
Way before dinosaurs, it started with bacteria, but before life, and then when the Earth started to cool down, the kingdom of trilobites was created. Nobody knows exactly how they were born, but they started off as the Cambrian period, the very first period of life.
Yeah, so that is a very...
Well said.
And what do we know about the ocean? Why did the trilobites and all these unicell creatures have to come to live in the ocean?
Because the ocean was the only place with salt water, I think.
With life, the ocean was
Yeah.
very, very dirty, and it had all kinds of poisonous salts and things that needed to be cleaned up. And these creatures, their job was to
Clean up all the bad bacteria.
Okay, so let's keep
So-
it here. Yes, James.
Also, as you can see here, the continents are always different in each time.
So this period down there, if you look, you see that the continents are
Different.
different.
Even with the
What happened
dinosaurs.
here, Bodhi?
The glaciers.
So there was an ice age. And what happens when an ice age comes?
Oh,
Yes,
a
James.
mass extinction.
Yeah, mass extinction. You die out, or you change, you evolve and survive.
So that's when the trilobites died.
They evolved a little from, look how different they are over here to here. See? And they continue to live in the Ordovician period also. So what happens here, Bodhi?
Then the trilobites evolved to because when they first started, they were just little creatures. They didn't even have eyes. They could only feel, and then they developed eyes, and then other things started to grow, like the
Cranoids.
crinoids.
So are the cranoids creatures or plants?
There are plants that can live in the ocean.
You think they're plants? They're actually creatures that look like plants. Yes.
Are they creatures?
They're creatures. And you see these rings around them?
Yeah.
Those, they absorbed some of those salts, the mineral salts from the ocean, and they built these stone rings around them to make them strong and steady so they could stand up in the ocean. And when they died, those rings fell to the bottom of the ocean, and that actually helps us to find out more about the very beginning of life. Yes, Jason?
And that can, how many he has, that we can also mean how old he
You
is.
think so? I don't know that for sure, but we certainly can do some research on that. Yes, James?
Also, big old life happened because trilobites were like this big. This big. Sometimes they can get bigger, but also more ones like the horseshoe crab, the sea scorpion, and the giants
Cephalopods.
And it says giants in the name, so you can see how
So
big that is.
these cephalopods look like they have
Tentacles.
legs on the top of their head, right? Those have tentacles. And like James said, there were massive trilobites, and then there were smaller ones. And do you remember?
Some
the-
could be
Yes, I
this
have that
size
one
and-
fossil that Miss Ina gave me that is
Yeah,
of a smaller
I have
one.
one.
You have one too?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they varied in size. So now, are they still unicells, or are they like coming together to specialize?
coming together to specialize.
Yeah, so that means some were doing the eating parts of the cell were doing the eating part was the growing part, other one was like getting rid of unwanted stuff from the body. So now we have multi-cell creatures. Is it, look, there was an ice age here, they survived, and what do you think the weather is getting?
it could be sometimes cold or sometimes hot.
Sometimes hot. Now as we move away from that ice age, the weather is getting warmer and warmer, and some of these creatures are getting closer to the surface of the water.
Yeah.
And checking to see if they can live outside the water because they like the gases that's outside of the water better.
But some can't and some can.
Some can, and they are realizing that maybe with the help of the sun they can, and the gases, that maybe they can produce their own food instead of eating other creatures. Kessan, would you please move a little bit? Thank you. And we stop here.
And these
What time are we in our period?
so
Yes, Jay.
Silurian.
Silurian. And what's happening here?
It looks like that plants are starting to actually come like those.
Yeah, those are the corals, and then look at they're still at the bottom of the ocean. Bodhi said that first they didn't have eyes, and now they've developed eyes, but they're still down there because they are having trouble moving. What's happening to the earth, the land?
Oh, it looks like it might be moving. The climate is moving down.
Yeah, and the earth is moving, and mountains are being formed. Look at all these sea lilies. And they are probably those ones that thought, maybe we should start making our own food and use the gases that are outside.
Oh.
Yes, James.
And also it looks like bugs are starting to come, like millipedes.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah. So the first insects were growing in the Silurian period. Yes, Jason.
And it seems like it's getting even colder.
Now it's getting colder again, and there's an ice age that comes. So what happens in the ice age? Yes.
This is the final stage of the trilobites where they die.
Yeah. So and when the ice age comes, the trilobites die out. They didn't evolve, and they are not going to.
They lived for 3 whole periods now.
They did, yes. They started here at the Cambrian, and they continued onward to the very end of the Silurian, and by the time Devonian started, it did not survive.
Yeah.
But the creatures that evolved and survived, look at that. Oh, let's move over, Gianna. And all this time, the creatures had only a hard shell on the outside of their body. Because that poisonous salts, the minerals were bothering their skin, they grew hard parts outside. Now they have started to grow a rod inside their body, grow bones inside their body, and they have also developed fins so they can move around and not just sit in one place and eat creatures that pass them by. They can go looking for their food. And the land is moving, and the more mountains are being formed, and insects have come to live on land. You see the first insects and creatures that don't want to be eaten by other bigger creatures are moving away from the oceans, and we see the coming of the amphibians. Oh, to go to the water at some point, right?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, because they're still evolving. Yes, good.
Yeah. And the giant dragonfly could be as big as the school Messina said.
And I wonder why those creatures were so big back then and why they're so small today. Yes, James.
Because there's so much oxygen that they get to, because there's more oxygen than there is right now. There's so much that they get to breathe in a lot.
So there was lots more oxygen in the air, so you think they were bigger in size? I think so too. And look, the plants came out of the water, and they have also started to live on land, and there's many different types of plants that are growing on land now. And I see that there's coral and there's iron also.
Yep, this is also the last stage of the Paleozoic.
Yeah, that is right. Now let's scoot back a little bit. So, Bodhi, my presenter, what happens here?
What happens?
We are here now.
Oh, in the Permian? Yeah, the Earth, all that when the Earth was hot, it got trapped under the Earth is surface, the crust, and it started and then it started to get angry and form and push its way out of the crust and form volcanoes. And also some reptiles. A few reptiles were developing.
Yeah, and then what are they doing? Instead of carrying their babies around, they're going to lay eggs, and the eggs have a hard outer shell, so they're protected.
And then when they grow up, it will just start all over again. That they can lay babies much easier than
So they are
carrying
following
them
that
around.
rule where they were told that they have to grow, to eat, and to reproduce or make more of themselves, right?
Yes.
And look, some of the seas are going to get dried up, and more land is going to appear. Yes, Kason.
It's forming and it's turned into a desert of land.
Yes, because the
cycle,
sand is,
right?
the water is drying up. You see more desert land coming up. It's very, very dry now.
Even larger